I just cut that straight in half. I've had a handful of messages and emails asking me to do a sharpening video on a convex blade, and I feel as though it's one worth doing because I first kind of got into knives, well, fixed blade knives, around 2009 to 2011. I got myself a Falcon Even A1, and at the time on the forums I was reading and the videos I was watching, everyone made a big deal about how difficult it was to sharpen convex blades, and everyone would use sandpaper on a mouse pad and just push into it and let the flex of the mouse pad just cause natural convexity in the blade for you. And that was kind of the accepted method back then, and you know, I since find out that that's a terrible method, and yet people still talk about it commonly. I see on Reddit, people say that that's what they do. I've seen it on blade forums. Yeah, I see it all over the place, and still on YouTube as well. And it's really bad. It's a really bad way of doing it. You're limited to using silicon carbide paper only. You're limited to only edge trailing strokes, because if you go edge leading, you'll just cut straight into the paper. It's slow. You don't have much control over the shape of the convex. You can't really read profile. It's just all around bad. You know, the only reason people do it is because they don't know any better, basically. And anyone that has ever tried sharpening a flat V-edge, unless you are a robot, you'll notice very quickly that it's very difficult to keep that V-edge flat, and you end up convexing it. Which is great, because that means it's easy to sharpen convex blades, right? Having said that, you do require some precision sharpening a convex blade, because you want to allow the blade to rock as you sharpen to follow that convexity. You do need to make sure that you don't allow it to come up over the angles that you're sharpening at. So I have no idea what angle basically the apex to the spine is on this. This is a Bark River Aurora 2. I hate Bark River, by the way, just so I'll get that in there. Let's say that's a 20-degree angle. You don't want to be rolling up to 22 degrees unless you're always going to roll up to 22 degrees. Because if you're sharpening it consistently up to 20 and then you roll up to 21, you've just basically ruined your apex. So that will require you basically to grind it back down to a 20-degree angle or continue at a 22 degree. So I'm going to sharpen this knife on a flat whetstone. This is a Veneve resin bonded diamond. It's 400 FEPAF stone. I'll dull this on something first. Okay, so I've got a Spyderco medium here. Just going to dull this. Ugh. That's that's going to be pretty dull. This is just standard printer paper. So that's dull. Just going to wet this stone down. Again, you can use, you know, any flat stone you want. Obviously, it depends on the steel you're sharpening, and how dull your blade is will dictate, obviously, how coarse you want to start. I think I can start okay on this 400 FEPAF. One peculiarity with a terrible Bark River knife is the plunge line is never very it's not very consistent when they freehand grind these. They don't get the plunge line in dead on the belt every time, so it's high. The face grind is higher at the plunge than the rest of the blade. So if I put this at a 90-degree angle on the stone, I won't actually be able to. The stone won't reach straight in down here, which is why you can see from previous scratch markings I've kind of put it a bit diagonally, because I don't want to go in there and use all my time to kind of regrind it. I just don't care enough. It's a bushcraft knife. I don't care if it looks good, you know, it's just whatever. So that's why I'm going to be holding it at a slight angle. So basically what you want to do with this is find the angle of the apex. And the way I do that is I put the knife spine facing away from me, edge facing towards me. I put it flat on the stone, and then I lift the spine until I can see the gap disappear between the apex and the stone. And that's my angle. So I don't want to lift the spine any higher than that during the sharpening process, but it's fine for the spine to go lower than that, because that swoop is going to cause the convexity. Now you don't want to be deliberately pulling a huge swoop in this, because you're going to go up too high, and as you go up too high you're going to just gouge that apex in. So start off slowly, and after, you know, a minute or so you'll start to kind of get in the groove of letting it convex slightly. I sometimes like to go in slight ovals. It just feels more fluid, and once you kind of get in that groove it just makes everything easier. If sometimes you want to do kind of shorter passes because you'll have a little bit more control, and if you do that you're going to want to kind of work up and down the stone to kind of spread the wear. Otherwise, if you can manage to get full length passes in, then that'll, you know, spread the wear well as well. You'll quite easily be able to hear if you over angle as well, because you'll get a heavy scraping noise. I mean, sometimes that will just be the plunge line pushing into the stone, so it's, you know, don't panic if you hear that noise. It's not always the end of the world. And at the end of the day it's just a Park River knife as well, so yeah, that scraping there you can hear was me just getting the plunge line smashed up against the side of the stone. It's fine really, as long as you don't go too hard and you'll chip your stone. So I dulled this quite a lot, so I'm pressing quite hard here. You generally wouldn't want to press harder than necessary, but the faster you move the knife and the harder you press, the faster the steel will abrade. I believe you will fatigue the steel at the apex, you know, if you apply unnecessary force to it. So when you're deburring and forming your final apex, then you will definitely want to lighten up on the pressure. So now I'm getting towards the belly, and the belly is kind of like where I like to do my kind of oval shape. Again, that's not mandatory, that's just kind of what feels fluid and natural to me. As you get towards the tip, you want to lift the handle up like this so that you can maintain that angle. Now I haven't looked at that other side yet because I've sharpened this knife a handful of times. I'm fairly confident with it, but I would suggest you inspect it regularly and make sure that you are actually getting low enough down towards the apex, and also in fact not being too rigid and forming a flat V-edge. So you want to make sure that you've kept some convexity. Don't worry at all really about the aesthetics of it at the moment. You can blend all that in. All we need to do is make sure that we get basically to the apex. Anything further up we can just clean up on the stone. That's not sharpening, you know, that's just aesthetics. And you can move the stone around. Sometimes you might find it easier to kind of work this way when you're getting towards the tip. So just move the stone around however much you need to get it in a comfortable position. If you do accidentally start forming a secondary edge, you can just lower your angle and sharpen away and it will just blend in. So it's not really a big concern. So what I'm going to do now is check for a burr. Just sharpen that side. So I'm going to be looking for a burr on this side. The way I'm going to do that is with a flashlight. I shine it down from the spine and the burr will be protruding out this way, and the light will reflect off it and I'll see the burr. If you've formed a really big burr, then you won't need to do this at all. You'll just be able to see it or feel it. A large burr is unnecessary, but it's also fine if you don't care. I'm just going to see, I don't know if this camera angle is going to pick it up. Yeah, I think we're going to struggle. I think potentially you can see that burr on camera, I'm not sure. But it's just a little reflection of light. And I can see a reflection of light. So I've done that side now. I will go back to that side. But first, I'm going to swap over And I don't like to push away, because when I push I can't see the apex to the stone, especially when I get over here. So I like to switch hands. This, for most people, doesn't come naturally. It didn't come naturally to me, I had to practice it. And you'll feel more awkward and rigid using your offhand. But I would suggest just going for it, practicing it, getting used to it. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Now on this stage I'm not going to only go as far as it takes me to pass the burr over, because the burr will pass over basically immediately. I want to make sure that I sharpen kind of as much steel away as I did on the other side, so that my apex remains centered. If I braid lots of steel on one side and then only deburr on the other side, that's just going to leave you with a chisel grind. So I'm going to check to make sure I have removed all the burr on this side. It looks like it, but I'm just going to confirm by making sure the burr has been passed back over. Sometimes you need to wipe off some of the junk. I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on this side. I feel like I've spent an equal amount of time, but maybe I haven't been getting close to that apex enough, or maybe it's just because my stone is starting to load and needs dressing, but I can't be bothered to do that right now. So now I don't want to just switch back to the other side and trying to start deburring, because I've got a big burr and it's going to take a while if I go for like just single passes. So what I'm actually going to do is basically the same thing I just did, but I'm going to stop before I form a large burr on the other side. So I'm passing the burr back over, but hopefully I'm going to pass a small burr over, and that's going to involve me doing a lot of checking. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to deburr with a single edge leading stroke towards me. And I'm not going to try and convex this, I'm going to just ultra lightweight just across the apex to try and pick that burr off. So that will not have taken the burr off the tip because it was a big burr. But I've got it across the heel and to some of the straight. So I'm basically just going to keep doing that. Just the tip now needs deburring. Now what I'm not trying to do here is form a micro bevel, because I just don't need one. If I do accidentally form a tiny micro bevel, then it doesn't matter. But that's not what I'm trying to do. So I'll show you what this looks like now. It's going to look pretty horrific, but we will clean that up later. So that's what it looks like now. You know, you don't need to sharpen all the way up here. You can thin this out as and when you need to. But that's kind of what we're looking like at the moment. I'll clean that up after stropping and stuff, and well, not after stropping, after showing you cut test. So this was completely dull before, couldn't cut paper. We've not even stropped yet, and it's, you know, blasting through paper. In fact, after recording this video I realised how long it was, and that I couldn't have such a terrible result for like a 15-minute video and such a poor sharpness test, and also not show how to strop a convex. So I went back and, you know, I didn't want to waste my entire life polishing a bark river, so I didn't. I just made it look a bit better at this certain angle. So it's still, you know, it still looks hazy and you can see scratches all over it, but I just wanted to show you that this is kind of your only way of having a consistent look in it, because you're sharpening like a large portion of the face of the blade, you're going to get scratches in it that aren't going to match the factory grind line. So your option is basically to spend an awful lot of time and mirror the whole blade, or you can just put up with the scratches in it, and that is really your only option in my opinion. Resattining it is just going to be so difficult, because obviously the apex goes all the way down to the grind goes all the way down to the apex, and you can't like just satin a flat and then leave the apex. You're going to be hitting the apex with the sandpaper or the stone, and that's going to cause you to dull it. So I think really a mirror is your only option, or just put up with it how it looks. So I'm now going to just demonstrate how I'd strop a convex. A lot of you might have seen Martin on the DBK channel, how he strops a convex, and I think it's a pretty common way of people stropping a convex, and I don't like it myself. So they kind of they strop the entire convex, and the reason I think this is bad again is you don't really know when to stop. There's no feedback telling you to stop, so you're going to over angle and you're going to round. So I personally would suggest stropping this like a V-edge. So just find your angle and do a very light pass, just like a V-edge. My hand hit the table on that one, so I messed my angle up. So that's how I would strop with like a bench strop. But a lot of you guys, I guess, are going to want to maintain in the field. So with a field strop, this is a prototype. I haven't got any of these on my store yet, but I will have soon. You can either rest it on something and hold it, you know, where the leather isn't, and strop the exact same way. Or my preferred method is just to palm it. These are quite thick, so you can palm it and support the whole thing like this. I don't think it's feasible to hold these at the end. There's just not enough control with it like that. So I'm going to try and do a sharpness test now. These are blue Rizzlers. Very thin, very delicate, very hard to cut, freestanding. I don't know if we'll get through this, but we might. Almost all the way through, and you can see we even deviated off course, and it was keen enough that it didn't fold from deviating as well. So that's, you know, that's really, really sharp. That will split hairs easily, which I'll show you now. So I just got a white paper backdrop and brought the camera in closer to see if we can get on film cutting this hair. I think we can see that it's a bit out of focus. This is the best camera angle I can manage. I just cut that straight in half. So you can see the leftover bit. So that's all I've got for you really when it comes to sharpening convexes. It's pretty easy once you know what to do, or once you decide on what technique to use. The only downside really is that it ends up looking like that. You don't really have an option. It's either going to be polished mirror, or scratchy as hell, or halfway in between a scratchy as hell mirror. If you want to get some awesome stropping compounds, or literally the best leather strops available, then go and have a look at my website.